Hello, and welcome to Everyday Tarot, your daily dive into the divine wisdom of the tarot. I'm your host, Camille A. Saunders, and today I'll be talking about reading tarot cards for yourself. Whether you're a seasoned tarot reader or just starting to explore, this podcast offers daily insights, intuitive messages, and practical advice drawn from the cards. Each episode is designed to help you connect with your inner wisdom, find clarity in your decisions, and tap into the energy of the universe. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday, for fresh perspectives and empowering guidance from the tarot as interpreted by me. All right, so as I said, for our main discussion, I'll be talking about how do you read tarot cards for yourself. So I know last episode we talked about finding a deck and sort of the intuition of what deck is good for you. Now you're home, you have your deck, right? You've started to get to know it, but how do you actually read tarot cards for yourself? And there are kind of different philosophies, I would say. There's sort of the idea of memorizing the cards versus intuitive reading. So intuitive reading would be looking at the image on the card, any symbols, the vibe, and seeing what comes to mind for you. Whereas memorizing is what it sounds like. You're using outside sources, maybe like books, a tarot deck guide, or other tarot readers to learn about what the Waite Smith cards usually mean. So, yeah, these are sort of the general ideas. I think most tarot readers do a bit of both. There's some level of memorizing or like them having learned the cards, perhaps just through intuitive reading. Um, but now that they've done it enough, again, like sort of figuring out, okay, like this is sort of generally what I think this card means or that kind of thing. Um, but some people really would say, like, oh, you have to start with memorizing. And I think, as I talked about in another podcast, for me personally, I sort of thought I had to memorize. I used to use an app that I think was called Galaxy Tarot, where I would pull cards on my phone to learn them a bit, would have a short description, and that was helpful for me to sort of get to know some of the cards. But again, I think memorizing for me personally was like a bit of a barrier to getting to know the tarot. And I sort of just like gave up on it after some time and just started using the cards and doing different things. So I'll talk about some sort of other ways to get to know the cards. So some of the tarot books I have, which are sort of have different ways to get to know the cards. The first one I think of is called Tarot for Change by Jessica Dorr. It basically goes through each card in the deck with a couple pages on each card and talks a lot about sort of like transformation or sort of like self help through tarot, I would say. I believe Jessica Dorr is like a therapist also, so there's sort of this like therapeutic lens to it of like guidance and again sort of transformation and mental health through that. So like for example, that would be like one way to get to know the cards. Maybe you could read like each little section like once a day or even once a week to just sort of help you get to know like another person's perspective on the cards. Again, I don't think that that's necessary, but if you want some books that I like or recommend for sort of getting to know the cards, that's one of them. I also have a book called 21 Ways to Read a Tarot Card by Mary Kay Greer. And it's a pretty thick book and it just sort of talks about all these different ways to read tarot cards. Again, I wouldn't necessarily say that like it's like a beginner book. I think it could be, but I would say personally I'd probably find it a bit overwhelming in the beginning. So maybe mark that one down as for later book. Kitchen Table Tarot by Melissa Sanova. I had that one for a bit and again had great intentions of reading it. Oh yeah, this is how I'm gonna like learn and memorize the cards. Honestly, didn't really work for me. But I that is a book that gets commonly recommended. And again, if you want to do more of a bit of like memorizing, getting to know the cards, that is a cool way to do it. A book that I really like now that I wasn't actually going to add to my list, but I'm thinking about it right now, is The Library of Esoterica tarot book. It's like a beautiful, I would say more like art book. It could be, I could imagine it as like a coffee table book. It's pretty thick. It's an expensive book because it is very like illustrated and it's been super helpful for me to kind of get to know and look at different versions of the same tarot card. So, again, in each section, it will have, I'd say, like 5 to 10 images for each card. So, to pull it from different decks, it tells you what deck it's from. So, it's a really cool way to get to know different decks and just how they interpret the card or like how the artist did it. Again, I would say like not necessarily like a beginner book. I mean, it's beautiful, and if you really like tarot and the art of it, it's a really cool book. The Library of Esoterica has different sort of versions of this book. Like this one's for tarot. I know they have one for astrology. I think they even have one for like magic or witchcraft generally. That was the first place that I heard about it. Was on Pam Grossman's podcast, The Witch Wave. Um, which I used to listen to years ago. I know she did some of the editing, I believe, on the witchcraft one. I think that's what it's called. But anyway, that's a really cool publication. But these are sort of like different, again, ways to get to know the cards. So that's kind of like the books section. Another way, like I said, to get to know the cards would just be like to pull a card a day. This is super common. Again, it gets sort of, I would say, like recommended if you kind of look up like, oh, how to get to know tarot cards or beginner tarot. Is just that every day you, maybe with your morning coffee or drink or whatever you like to do, sort of your ritual in the morning, you shuffle your tarot cards and you pull a card, and just sort of, again, a different way to get to know the deck. That can be really nice. Again, like if it doesn't work for you to do it every day, that's okay, right? Like it can just be getting to know the cards, creating a practice, and just sort of for yourself figuring out like, what is this deck like? Right? Do I feel like when I see a card a day or whatever day I pull the cards, um, right? Do I think, is it helpful for me to go into that day with that intention? Is it helpful for me to think about, oh, this might happen today, like kind of like a heads up or something you might need to tune into? Um, Again, all of that can be really helpful. And this is just, again, like different options for how to get to know your cards and sort of read for yourself. So the other sort of like section or way to get to know the cards is through tarot spreads. So you probably heard about this before. I'm gonna do a whole episode on tarot spreads coming up I think in 2 episodes. So if this is super exciting to you, like definitely check that out. And like I said, for my first episode of this podcast that I put out on January 1st, 2025, I created a 2025 5 card tarot spread, and actually made it into a PDF that if you want to do that tarot spread for yourself, maybe you have a deck, and again, this is like a way to start getting to know spreads. You can sign up for my newsletter and you'll get that PDF for free. If you want, you can always just get the PDF and leave my newsletter if you're not interested in staying on it, but that is one way to get it. I'll put the link for that in the show notes for this episode and also on my website under this episode as well if you want to sign up for that and just get that PDF. So created this 5 card spread. So you can create your own tarot card spreads, which is super cool, but I would say it took me 5+ years before I ever started like doing that. I used to just really do other people's spreads that I saw. So yeah, ways to find spreads. Again, like sometimes I'll do a whole episode about this, but I'm just going to talk about some of the ones I see. So often for new or full moons, a lot of witchy folks online will post a tarot spread that you can do. So it'll be like, okay, full moon in Aquarius spread, and it's usually maybe like 3 to 5 cards and topics that they've pulled out that maybe have to do with this particular moon or the astrology of it. And then at home, right, you can look at that spread and the questions, and then you pull your own cards for, each of the 3 or 5 questions or whatever it is, or the themes. And then you sort of see like, okay, like what is this like for me? I'll give you some of my favorite folks that I like to follow online. And most of them have public postings that you can look at, as well as paid offers. So if you really like them, you can contribute. Some of them are on Patreon, some of them do more like stuff on Instagram or have their own websites. Yeah, so some of my favorite folks to follow. There's Catherine Soleil of Persephone's Path, and she has a Patreon. She does collective tarot readings every month and has a lot of different options on her Patreon. I really like how she reads tarot. It's very different than a lot of people, and she kind of puts that into the beginning of her videos. She has different levels of Patreon, and usually anyone that has a Patreon, there's usually some free posts you can check out if you want to get like the vibe of um, them without paying first. So that's one person who I really enjoy. They also create their own like tinctures and stuff every month. And one level of their Patreon is she'll create these and mail them to you. So that can be a really cool way to sort of connect with, again, sort of like whatever the full moon cycle is, and be connected to other witchy folks, which is super cool. Another person I love to follow is Gabriella Herstick, who actually made the Goddess of Love tarot deck that I use a lot. I'll probably pull a card from that deck today just because we're chatting about her. She also has a Patreon. She's an author. She has like at least I think 5 witchy books too, of different topics. So she's very prolific, loves to write. She's an Aquarius. Always has amazing things to say. She has a podcast also called Love, Lust, and Magic. If you want to again sort of get the vibe for her. And I'll link to her Patreon as well in the links here. But yeah, she usually creates full guides for every full moon, and they often have tarot spreads and rituals and all sorts of things. Another person that I follow is Jackie Glob of Shamelessly Sexy Jackie. She has a YouTube channel right now where she's putting out videos, I think, almost every day. She mostly does astrology, but she utilizes tarot in her collective astrology readings as well. And again, it can just be kind of fun to see like how other people do tarot, how they utilize it. If you're into astrology, like great person to follow. I'll link her YouTube, and that also links to her website. And I know she actually does like astrology and other readings as paid offers if you really like her and want to kind of get to know her more. There's Marcella Kroll, amazing reader, pretty famous in the LA area. Again, mostly you'll have to pay for her stuff, but you can see some of her collective readings on Instagram or just like her style. So I'll link to her Instagram. Um, Again, very cool, magical person, does a lot of collective readings or kind of talking about things that apply to everyone. Another person that I like to follow on Instagram is Madam Adam. They do a lot of tarot reading live on Instagram and other platforms. Usually, what you're seeing live are people paid for readings, and then they're sort of like giving the people they're reading live. So they'll say, like, this is for this person. But you can just get a feel for how they read tarot, learn the cards this way. And again, just can be really cool to see, like, how do other people do tarot? Like, what is this like? It can just be sort of more of like a passive way, maybe, of learning cards and how other people do tarot, but just can sort of help you get connected in that way. So, those are 5 different folks that I like to follow online. That are sort of in the tarot world. As I talked about earlier, you can always create your own tarot spreads. And if you want more guidance on that, often when you buy a tarot deck, the guidebook that comes with your tarot deck will sometimes have suggested spreads in the front of it. One of mine even has like how to read tarot cards, like just a lot more advice than just spreads. It talks about shuffling and doing the deck, some of the things I've talked about on this podcast. And that can be dependent on the different tarot deck you have. So some might not have that at all, and some might have like 10 different spreads you can do that maybe this person created. So if you have your tarot deck at home, check out your guidebook at the beginning usually, and it'll have often like some info about spreads too. And like I said, in I think 2 episodes from now, I'm going to do a whole episode all about different tarot spreads, a lot of my favorite ones or the ones that are common. So you can tune into that to learn more, and we'll sort of deep dive into the spreads. All right, so let's dive in and see what the cards have to say today. And I am going to pull from my Goddess of Love tarot deck that Gabriella Herstick made along with the illustrator Julia Popesco, who's Snakes for Hair online. All right, so actually three cards came out as I was pulling these cards. One sort of fell off the top, and then it felt right to pull two more. So I guess we're going to be doing three card spread today. And I did have sort of a question today of like, what do we need to know? What does the collective need to know? Um, and yeah, what do we need to know about reading for ourselves? So the first card that came up was the Four of Cups. And again, I'm pulling this from the Goddess of Love tarot deck. Um, so yeah, cups are sort of emotions, like watery, um, and things like that. So yeah, I'm gonna read a couple things from the book, and then see what else comes up for me. It says it is wise to reassess the gifts you've been given before you reject them as not enough. It's one thing to be realistic, and it's another to be unsatisfied with what you've got because it doesn't live up to your internal hype or expectations. Anxiety and fear around relationships or expressions of intimacy and affection may stop you from recognizing how good you have it or how good it can be. Sometimes what the goddess sends you isn't what you want, but what you need. Instead of focusing on the negative, on what you don't have, breathe into it. Take a step in releasing these narratives and finding more supportive ones instead. And in this deck, she also often has affirmations along with each card. So for this card, the affirmation is I trust in the unfolding of love and abundance that the goddess is making available to me. So yeah, when I saw this Four of Cups, it is sort of this like not enoughness. So maybe again, when reading for yourself, you're feeling like, okay, I have this deck, I'm pulling cards, but I don't know if I feel totally connected or like, am I doing it right? Like, I want more. What should I be doing? Sort of this like yearning, longing piece. And I feel that like this card's telling you it's okay. Like you're doing it. Just because it maybe doesn't look like other people or how they do it, or it doesn't feel totally like ground shaking, life altering. That's okay. Um, right? You're doing it. You're being consistent. You're getting to know the deck. It might just take time. So that's kind of what comes up from this card for me. And then the second card I pulled is the Wheel of Fortune. And the Wheel of Fortune is a major arcana card. This one has a couple different things on it. Some, like on this particular card, I see like a Cupid, sort of like angel, cherub, an eagle, a lion, and a bull, like looking like the Taurus bull. There's also some roses in the background and a goddess in the middle that I don't know super well, but in the book it actually says who it is. So the corresponding deities, the ancient Celtic goddess Sheila na Gig. Let's see, she reflects the fecundity of the Wheel of Fortune, the never ending journey of death and rebirth. So, yeah, this is really a card of transformation. Again, it's sort of this Wheel of Fortune, like you think of the Wheel of Fortune game where you spin it and sort of see what happens. There is this sort of like you're not quite sure what's going to come up, and maybe that feels a little scary, but it's all part of the journey. Um, yeah, so I guess when I think about this card in relation to reading for yourself, I'm thinking about, um, yeah, that right, you have the ability, you are going through a transformation right now that might be related to the tarot, might be related to other things. It might feel like you're not in control, which is true, but you are being supported, um, right? And listening to this podcast might just be helping you really like ground yourself in that reality, and sort of say like, okay, like, right, maybe I heard this call that I need to get into tarot. I've been wanting to, or I have a deck, and right now part of that is this like transformation. Um, yeah. So one of the um, For this card, there's also a journal question that says, where do I feel guided by love and by the goddess, and how can I align myself with this force? So yeah, really thinking about like, what am I being guided to do? What symbols or things are coming up to me right now? What am I feeling called to do? Or what am I interested in? What's piquing my interest? And then actually like going and following that through, right? And that might be the part that feels a little scary, or might be this sort of journey of death and rebirth. As you think about it, something might have to crumple or die or get burned down or destruction in order for this new thing to come through for you. All right, and the last card I pulled is the Queen of Cups in reverse. So again, another cups, right? The first card we had was the Four of Cups. It's interesting that that one was upright. Then we had this Wheel of Fortune, which is like often a literal wheel, and then we have this like Queen who's upside down. So almost like within here, we're going through like our own journey as well. Also, there's a lot of circularity or sort of that like death rebirth look to all of these cards. You'll see if you go in the show notes, you can go to my website for this episode and you'll see the cards, the images that I pulled. So the Queen of Cups is, right, a lot of water. Cups are water generally in sort of the emotional realm, but this card actually shows like almost a water or like an image of like when you see like a hurricane on like weather radar. That's kind of what it looks like in the background. There's like these clouds and the water below and sort of this like spinning upside down, a little out of control. So I'm just going to look at sort of the reverse for this card. Since it is in reverse, it says in reverse, this card can mean you're too in your head or your heart, and you might need to find balance so you're not overwhelmed by emotions or logic. So a lot of that balance thing, again, cups are associated with water. This queen's entire self flows in the unyielding currents of the heart. The goddess is holding you close, tending to your wounds, and reminding you that even though love brings the potential for hurt and pain, it's imperative that you open yourself up anyway. So, really, this call of opening, of a little bit of vulnerability, and like this blooming, flourishing, like allowing that to happen, which I think, again, really makes sense after the Wheel of Fortune card of sort of like, okay, you're feeling out of this control and this like sort of vulnerability. And now this card's saying like, yeah, okay. And like, you need to open up even more and be even more like, allow yourself to be guided or see what comes up for you as the sort of offering. It says, take it into your work, your platonic and romantic relationships, and your spiritual and magical practice. So how do you find that balance between sort of the thought, analytical things going through your head, and then the sort of more emotional side of your heart, and sort of not getting too caught up in either one, but trying to find that balance. Um, all right, so yeah, that's sort of our reading for today. And again, thanks so much for joining me on Everyday Tarot. If you ever want to look up any of the decks that I talk about, they'll always be in the show notes and on my website. If you want to look at the cards I pulled today, or if you want to purchase the deck. And just as a reminder, this podcast comes out every day, Monday through Friday, for all of 2025. All right, see you soon. Bye bye.